Well, workers at the Honda factory were given the day off today after receiving confirmation they will lose their jobs by 2021. The company says it didn't take the decision to cut 3,500 jobs lightly, but with global changes, it was left with no choice. That's little consolation to the workers here, though. Minnie Stevenson has spent the day talking to workers. Minnie, what's the mood been like?
Absolutely, Fatima. A deeply depressing day for workers that I spoke to. Many of them had just learnt the news that they'd lose their jobs. And, of course, we can't underestimate how big a deal this is. For many of these people, they've spent their entire professional careers working at this factory. And there's also a sense that, you know, in 2 years' time, when Honda closes its doors, there's going to be an awful lot of people, thousands, in fact, going for the same jobs here in Swindon.
And we're hearing an awful lot about global uncertainty, this being inevitable, but actually it's come as a shock, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's come as a real surprise. People I spoke to said, sure, we know that for years now the UK car industry has been declining, but it was only in autumn that Honda said, don't worry, you're safe here, this factory will remain open despite, you know, the Brexit negotiations going on in the background. So then to learn yesterday, as many workers did for the first time on social media, that they may lose their jobs, they've said to me this will go down as one of the bleakest episodes in Swindon's history.
The Honda factory synonymous with Swindon. As one worker in the industrial town put it, you simply can't have one without the other. Except this morning came the news they'd expected but dreaded. People here told to pack up and go home for the day as official confirmation came, the factory to close its doors by 2021.
Good morning.
Jason Newport has turned up here every day of his working life. One of thousands of people who will now lose their jobs.
How are you feeling?
Gutted. Totally gutted. 23 years I've been in there. That's all I've ever done, really. I mean, I've got my wife works there, my brother works there, my cousin works there, her dad works there, her stepdad works there, her mum works in the canteen, her other brother works for Zodexo, he's a chef. There's like 10, 12 people of us affected by this. Just can't believe it, really. That's all I've done, that's all I've known is this place, and it's going to go, and it's just this whole town's just going to be a total mess.
A decision from Honda HQ in Tokyo came, blaming the global changes in the car industry and a transition to electric cars. The consequences, though, felt much closer to home, on a well-trodden path for a town which has come to depend on big industries.
Swindon and a new locomotive that's already historic.
Swindon, of course, famously made its name as a railway town, building the steam engines that drove the Industrial Revolution. But as the railworks declined, the city found a second lease of life: cars. By the mid-60s, well over 6,000 people were employed at the steel presses, supplying parts to companies right across the country. And despite the hardships of the 70s and 80s and the 90s, Honda gave the city a huge vote of confidence, not just opening a factory, but making it the centrepiece of the firm's European car operation.
It shows that Britain is still the #1 place to come for people who want to invest and get into the European market.
But then came the slow decline of the UK car industry, the job cuts, restructuring, recession, and now the end. 3,500 jobs to be scrapped and a town left to pick up the pieces. While the company didn't directly mention Brexit, uncertainty over Britain's future trading relationships is one of the big clouds lurking over the car industry. With Honda now moving production back home to Japan, where they've now secured a free trade deal with the EU, a decision which has left Honda worker Dave Roberts unsure of what the future holds.
Pretty sombre. Everyone's, well, just numb. A bit like me now, really.
How long have you worked here for?
24 years this year, so long time. My concern is my family. Got a family to support, keep a roof over our heads, and the thought of, you know, trying to find work with 3,500 other people, quite scary, really.
For people here, some who have spent their entire working lives at this factory, they're less concerned with the why and far more worried about what next.
Now, Honda says its decision to end manufacturing in the UK was not linked to Brexit. Instead, it blamed the dramatic changes taking place in the car industry with the shift to electric vehicles and the growing importance of the Chinese market. But many British companies do fear a no-deal Brexit may make the UK unattractive as a manufacturing base. Here's our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy.
On the day Britain's manufacturers rebranded themselves as Make UK, Honda announced, somewhat awkwardly, the UK is no longer the place it wants to make its cars. The business secretary, Greg Clark, withdrew from the conference to handle the fallout, but then reversed back in at the last minute.
Now, I'm not going to pretend to an audience of manufacturers that this is anything other than a very bitter blow.
He's right. Any of these business people will tell you there's no shortage of problems in British manufacturing, but the total confusion surrounding Brexit is the icing on the cake.
I'm sure there's all sorts of other reasons around the specific Honda case, which we will hear in due course. But the uncertainty and the climate we find ourselves in is just not good for long-term investment at the moment. The quicker we get this resolved, the better.
Timing-wise, Honda's dramatic decision couldn't be any worse today for the business secretary, Greg Clark, who came here and took to the stage to sell his vision of Britain at the heart of the next industrial revolution, led, in his view, by a high-tech, all-electric car industry. Well, Honda, for one, clearly wasn't listening, and while it went to great pains to say that Brexit had nothing to do with its decision to shut the Swindon plant, Mr. Clark, the arch Remainer, was only too happy to make the link.
And I've been always quite clear that a situation in which our manufacturers don't have the certainty that they need about the terms under which over 2/3 of our trade will be conducted in less than 40 days' time is unacceptable. It needs to be brought to a conclusion and without further delay.
To lose one car company, so the saying goes, is misfortune. To lose two is carelessness. Because Honda's bombshell follows Nissan's, another big Japanese car maker that just 2 weeks ago pulled its investment in a new model that Mr. Clark had personally sought to keep in Britain. Nissan did cite Brexit as one of the reasons, as did Jaguar Land Rover and Ford, both of whom have recently announced massive job cuts. A fact not lost on the shadow business secretary, who was in the Commons today to hear Mr. Clark's second urgent statement on the British car industry in almost as many weeks.
Honda's decision is a damning indictment of this government's failure to support car manufacturing and ensure business confidence, both in terms of Brexit and in terms of their so-called industrial strategy.
The elephant in the room for all big car companies is the shift away from diesel to electric vehicles. Ironically, something that Greg Clark believes Britain should be leading. But that pitch came too late for Honda.
The politicians don't give a damn for us. We tell them what our problems are, and they look and they give the usual beautiful middle class thing. Oh, how interesting. Oh, that's a jolly thing. And actually don't do anything for us.
What we need to do is get a deal done very quickly. And if that means a no deal, we're not scared of that. We just want clarity.
That was the message today from the hundreds of manufacturers gathered here. They want to make in the UK, just as the new logo says. But thanks to Brexit, the majority of them are simply too nervous to invest.
Well, joining me now are two employees of the Honda factory here in Swindon, Derek Chambers and Jason Newport, who you saw in our earlier report. Also with us is Ian Mean, the Director of Business West, which supports and promotes trade and industry in this region, and Christian Stadler, who's Professor of Strategic Management at Warwick Business School. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. If I can just turn to you first, Derek and Jason. I know it's an incredibly upsetting day for you. Just tell us a little bit about how long you've worked at Honda and what today has been like.
Well, I've worked there 23 years. Obviously, yesterday we found out, so everyone just gets a text message come through on their phone, Honda's shutting. I hadn't even gone into work.
And this is before the official announcement, so you're finding out through the media?
Everybody found out through a text come through on their phone.
Yeah, from a friend of a friend.
Yeah.
Passed down the line like it does, like wildfire, especially in situations like that.
Nothing gets mentioned.
No.
You go in, so I'm sat at home, I'm waiting all night to go into work. Got about 1 hour's sleep, absolutely just sitting there racking my brain, what's going on. Getting there this morning, and unbelievably, nothing said, and we just start building cars for 2 hours. And then they have a meeting.
This is going to affect your families, isn't it? Because it's not just the two of you that work at Honda.
No, so my wife works there. She's been there, 17 years. Son Billy's been there, 14 years.
Yeah, my wife works there. That's Derek's stepdad.
Yeah.
Her dad works there. My brother works there. I've got cousins work there. I've got friends I went to school with work there.
Yeah.
I could reel off about.
Yeah, I've got two brother-in-laws work there. They've been there sort of 25 and 30 years.
What's it going to do to Swindon?
Devastate it, really.
Yeah, it's going
It's
to
not
ruin the
just
place.
the Honda people, it's all the supply chains. The knock-on effect, like I say, 1,200 drivers alone that supply the parts. And then
You've got people that build the front end, you've got people that do the seats, you've got people that build the panels.
Everything, yeah, nuts and bolts, everything.
Bolts.
All supplied by somebody.
So you've got 3,500 there in the factory.
Yeah.
By the time you add everybody else up, 10, 11,000, all scrambling for a job in 2 years' time.
All going for the same jobs from now on, yeah.
Ian, I want to bring you in because we heard there the supply chain is going to be affected. You represent thousands of businesses in this area. How many of them are going to be impacted?
Good question. We don't really know, but the estimates are locally there could be 7% of the companies in this area, and nationally 10%. That's a large amount of companies. And remember that these workers, these guys, they're skilled people. They were inherited, as your film you saw. This was the rail city. Proud workers, really skilled workers. Now, they were, for Honda, a ready-made skill set. So these people are going to find it very, very difficult to get jobs. Our job as Business West, with other chambers of commerce and other business associations and the government task force, which is going to probably have its first meeting on Thursday, is to start work immediately to help guys like this.
Christian Stadler, Honda has said this has nothing to do with Brexit. Do you buy that?
I don't buy it. So it's probably not the only factor. Well, for sure it's not the only factor. But when you look that Japan has a trade deal with the European Union where they can be certain that there'll be no tariffs, whereas at the moment we do not know whether there'll be any tariffs between the UK and the European Union. If there are, they're 10% on cars, there'll be 4% on parts. In a highly integrated industry, that's a massive cost, so it will be a factor.
So it's the uncertainty?
There is the uncertainty, and the reason why I think Honda is not talking about this, it is politically not opportune at the moment. Why would they, say things which the government doesn't want to hear? It doesn't do them any favors, so there's no need for them to blame it on Brexit.
But they're also shutting Turkey. That's not in the EU.
That is true, yeah.
So what's that got to do with Brexit? Nothing.
Yeah.
So the consolidation, sure, but Britain was for many decades the entry point to the European market. Tony Blair said it, in the little video early on. That's why what it was originally, this kind of bridge between the world and Europe. And I'm afraid we're losing some of that advantage here.
Derek and Jason, the government has said it's going to do everything it can to support Honda workers and people in this community. Do you feel at all buoyed by that? Is it
not really?
No.
Where are they going to magic these jobs up from? The area.
I don't even see the Prime Minister or any. Has she said anything today? I've not heard a thing.
No.
I've watched the news all day. She hasn't said a thing.
Yeah.
Some of those politicians, the top ones, not just anybody, the Prime Minister or whoever, they need to get to Swindon. They need to come to this town and have a look at what it's going to do to this place.
What it's going to do, yeah.